sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I wish we were in New Orleans, at least from this week, but however, we are covering it up on a Super Bowl Friday before we get into the game. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us part of your lovely evening. Jay Steph is my partner in crime and co-host here on the show. We made it to this point. For the Super Bowl now in New Orleans, it is getting intensified and we're ready for Sunday. But we also got a lot of stuff going on around in the league and NBA trade deadline. There's a lot really to kind of, break down, explain, and of course our Super Bowl picks and takeaways here tonight. But, boy, we had a lot going on, at least from last night with the NFL honors, Hall of Fame inductees. So I'm excited about this because it's like, I know a lot of people have been kind of backlashing with snubs and all that. I get that. But there's always
Adam Vinatieri.
Yeah, Adam Vinatieri. Hey, by the way, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, but now and I've been saying that with everybody. It's getting
Eli freaking Manning is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, a lot of people have mixed, they have mixed opinions about it. It's insane.
If it had not been for those two Super Bowls, he would not have been a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh, no, of course. I mean, we all kind of knew that. And so that's the kind of thing that I wanted to touch upon from here before we talk more Super Bowl talk. So last night, of course, is the night of the most prestigious awards in the NFL. And so the NFL honors last night, lots of people agreed upon all of the candidates that got selected, and some did not agree. Okay, and this always happens every year whenever the NFL Honors Awards are given out, because we even think about that with the NBA. And to be honest with you, a lot of people that I've spoken to has said, this is going to be quite some backlashes. But you knew that this was kind of what was going to happen. So last night, NFL Honors, to me, I agreed with a lot of this stuff. And I know a lot of people backlashed about the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson MVP talk. But here's the thing. I actually thought this was a perfect breakdown because Colin Cowherd went on and basically explained of how you would have broken down the Josh Allen and the Lamar Jackson MVP talk. It's like when we vote upon some of the greatest movies ever made. And especially when you look at the directors, you look at the people who put together the scripts, who put together all of the actors and actresses that make the movie a masterpiece. And what's funny about this is, one of them he explains about is Martin Scorsese. And he's infamous for the hit movie, The Goodfellas. Okay, arguably hit. Never got an award for that movie, right? No matter how great the plots and the storyboard, the actors, all of that. Martin Scorsese never got an award for that specific film. And it wasn't until The Departed came out, another Martin Scorsese masterpiece. That one came out, it didn't really get a lot of the hype and a lot of just the intensity as Goodfellas did. but it won an award. The point of that comparison is that, look, Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP, okay? And we knew 2019, unanimous, no doubt about it. He was a part of a great team. He was a part of a great offensive scheme, and that was kind of the whole talk about it. Now, last year, people can make the case that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, I think Josh, that would have been an opportunity for him to win that MVP, because if you look at a lot of the numbers, right, he kind of struggled at the first point of it because that was when Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, was calling all the plays in Buffalo. But then they fired him and they went to Joe Brady. Once Brady came in, everything got cleaned up. It was just like when you watch Josh Allen with Brian Dable. And with Brady now in the building, it cleaned a lot of things up. Josh Allen was more of a competitor. And then that's where you kind of looked at the numbers and go, oh, Josh may have actually made a case. And Lamar, I'm going to be honest with you. Last year, truthfully, and I know why people had picked him as MVP. I understand why. You ain't got to explain to me. But I think personally, I didn't even think that was really his personal best. It really wasn't, Lamar's personal best. But I think Josh would have had more of the argument last year than what came in this year. Now, the only reason for it is because Josh Allen had 2 pivotal victories like all throughout the season. He beat the Chiefs in the regular season, kind of put the team on his shoulders. The other thing is the 10 of the 12 games, right? He had to basically put together a masterpiece where he had to put the team on his shoulders, especially when you took away Stephon Diggs, you took away Gabe Davis, and at the same time, you also deconstructed that defense to now go younger. So to me, I understand, Josh Allen is a very valuable piece. And I'm also saying the same for Lamar Jackson. They both are valuable on their own squads. They both are. Now, I will make the argument that I think Lamar had arguably one of the best passing seasons of his career. If you look at efficiency, if you look at passing yards, and you also look at completion percentage, this was by far the best year he's had. But why Josh Allen won the MVP is the same way you would have looked at why Martin Scorsese got an award for The Departed, because you knew that at some point, years later, he had to get one. I mean, think about it when Leo DiCaprio, when he first got his Oscar, right? Because it took a long time, and he's been a part of great films. He's been a part of Catch Me If You Can. He's been a part of Titanic. He's been a part of so many great hit films, but never won an Oscar. And that wasn't until The Revenant came out, and finally, Leo got his moment. Just like Josh Allen, who's been in this league for 7 years, Josh got his moment. It's nothing towards Lamar Jackson. I think they're both pivotal to their organizations. They are both like the most talented athletes. And this is outside of Patrick Mahomes. The 2 quarterbacks that are so fun to watch. And last night was the moment for Josh Allen. I'm not going to hinder that. I understand a lot of people are putting pushback on Lamar with the whole thing, but you knew that this was going to come. You knew that this was a moment for Josh Allen. And I am all for it. I think arguably Lamar did have better passing stats, but this was Josh Allen's moment. You all knew that. So I'm not mad at it. I congratulate him. And by the way, Josh is probably one of the most humble human beings on the planet, especially when it comes to this. Because Josh, you never heard of him up north in Wyoming. You didn't even pay attention to the kid. But he's humble. He says the right things. At the same time, he's living the best life. He's engaged, waiting to be married. And at the same time, he's putting the team on his shoulders. That's why you got to love a story of a franchise quarterback who is very pivotal to his organization. Chase, I had no again, I think this was the moment. It was.
Did you see how close the voting was?
I know. It was so close.
27 to 23.
Yeah. It was, and that's what I'm saying. These are two of the most they are the most talented quarterbacks outside of Patrick Mahomes. That is so fun to watch. And they have the utmost importance for their organization. I know most people in Baltimore are backlashing because they're like, dude, this was the best passing year for Lamar Jackson. I'm like, I get it. I do. But
Dan Orlovsky was one of the voters. And did you hear what he had to say today about Josh Allen and why he voted?
Yeah.
It's because he voted because Josh had to do more with less and because he was more valuable to his team than what Lamar was to his. And then when they said, elaborate on that, Lamar had Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is also very important to the Ravens and the success that they had, because if it wasn't for Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson doesn't have this good of a passing season. Not even close. And then the fact that Josh Allen had to do it with Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid as his top options.
A rookie, yeah.
Yep, and a rookie in Keon Coleman. And there was some games that like Amari Cooper was non-existent. Dawson Knox was non-existent. He was doing it with his legs. He was doing it with his arm. He was the reason why they were winning. Josh Allen deserved this. To all those people that are saying like Lamar got robbed, he had better stats and everything. Christian McCaffrey had better stats than Lamar Jackson did last year. Christian McCaffrey was much more important and valuable to his team than what Lamar was to the Ravens, bar none. And Lamar had 3,600 passing yards and 35 TDs. 41 if you count his rushing and stuff as well. But the fact is that Christian McCaffrey had almost 1,500 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving. And from the moment that he got traded and he got picked up by the Niners and everything, he was the sole difference in why that team made it to the Super Bowl last year and put that team on his back. So therefore, those Lamar Jackson fans can go ahead and look back at last year on why Lamar won it to this year on why Josh won it.
Well, and this is the thing. If you put these numbers, right, for Lamar Jackson, and let's say these were the numbers for last year, right, then it would be very solidified as to why.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize this, is that, look, Lamar's a two-time MVP. You could be okay with not having an MVP this year. Okay.
Voter fatigue.
Yeah. And listen, the thing is that I think they both hold an importance to their organizations. They both do. Because here's the thing. Baltimore moved off of Joe Flacco, who's a Super Bowl champion, who also was like a guy that was like, this is a guy out of Delaware, okay, that came in, had a John Harbaugh, a special teams coach, come in as a pivotal head coach that really made a difference. Because a lot of people, I mean, think about it. They were questioning a lot about John Harbaugh. They're like, a special teams coach, is he really going to get the job done? Because we've seen the Joe Judges. We've seen, a lot of these other coaches. But John Harbaugh made it all work. And to me, he holds a significant importance as to why this is the culture in Baltimore. Now, Buffalo, on the other hand, because you got to think, they were at a point where they were in multiple Super Bowls in the Jim Kelly era. And since then, they haven't even figured out the quarterback situation until Josh happened. Now, first year was rough. We all knew that. He was kind of raw. They needed to clean some things up. But once Brian Daboll came into this building, cleaned a lot of things up, boy, does Josh Allen look like a better version of himself. Now, I would also make the point that Ken Dorsey had a lot to do with some of those regressions, slight ones. But once Joe Brady came in, it brought back the consistency. This is why, I mean, you got to think, this is a lot of growth for Josh Allen. And they both were in the same draft class between Baker and Sam and Josh, and then there's Lamar.
And then the other Josh.
Yeah, and so it's like, to me, this was a moment Josh Allen needed to have. And that's the thing. I'm not taking away from what Lamar Jackson did this year. I think it was very impressive. And Todd Monken should also get a tip of the cap for this, because we know that he's a very pass friendly. And that was the whole argument, because you get a Derrick Henry, you got to take away a bit of the run game that Lamar is so good for, but he's still a twitchy quarterback. He's a snap and go type guy. This is why the build success for the future for Jaden Daniels is going to be so bright, because he has a strong culture coach, which is why, like, you knew that this year was meant to be for Josh Allen. And a lot of people, they could go on about it. Here's the other thing. Have you heard about the backlashes of Kevin O'Connell getting Coach of the Year over Dan Campbell?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, it's outrageous.
Dude, Dan Campbell got snubbed hard for that.
But here's the thing. I mean, if you told me last year, right, you took a Detroit team from where they were the year prior, the last year, and turn them around, get to the playoffs, and they get to the NFC Championship, that should have never gone unrecognized. It really shouldn't have. But I think what they were looking at, and again, these writers are not perfect. Okay, this is not like Major League Baseball writers. I mean, you've heard me say this multiple times, but it's the hardest part is, and listen, this is also some of the things that we think about when it comes to Nick Sirianni, because Sirianni had Steichen and he had Gannon, right, and made it to the Super Bowl. Once they both got coaching jobs, they had to get 2 new coordinators, and they were on a roll for 10-1, and then they completely fell off. And then they fired both those coordinators, got 2 more as a mulligan, and now they're back to the Super Bowl again. So,
and then they're going to lose one again to New Orleans.
If that's the case. But here's the thing, though, is like, is this solely upon the makings of the coach, or is this solely based upon he has such good coordinators that just know how to make everything else right?
So here's what I'm thinking. I don't mean to interrupt you, but like, here's what I'm thinking. Like, the writers and the voters are looking at it as an adversity type thing.
Yeah.
Because look at what happened last year. DeMeco Ryans comes in and he gets this Houston Texans team with CJ Stroud to 10-7. They get to the playoffs and, get in there as a wild card team. But then you got a guy like Kevin Stefanski, who was battling adversity with 5 different quarterbacks, ended up coming into the playoffs, making a playoff berth and everything. And now you're looking at it like, okay, who had more adversity that they had to deal with? And the reason why they didn't look at CJ Stroud with the adversity with the Houston Texans is because they viewed him as a good quarterback. It's the same thing why they didn't view, having adversity with the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, because they knew Jaden Daniels was going to be a good quarterback coming in, and he's got a Super Bowl coach that, a coach that made it to the Super Bowl and a great coordinator. And then you look at the Vikings, who Kevin O'Connell had to bring in Sam Darnold, who has not been successful in this league. And that's the adversity that the Vikings had. So they like the adversity stories.
They do, and that's why I was like, when I broke that down about Kevin O'Connell, I mean, mind you, he had to take a quarterback who was in 2 toxic organizations between the Jets and the Panthers. And a lot of it is that, Sam Darnold kind of plays a little bit reckless, right? Because there were some throws, there was some decision making, and and that was kind of the thing that really hindered his build until he got into a much more clean, refined, healthy organizational stature in the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell, and took him to the playoffs. Now, the other thing is that, I mean, again, I think people kind of recognize, because here's the thing, Joe Burrow winning comeback player of the year, right? You know what's crazy about that is, did you see the 3? It was Joe Burrow, then J.K. Dobbins, and then Sam Darnold. I think part of that is because they saw Darnold, and I think it was like the last 2 games that they saw Darnold's tendencies, right? They saw his tendencies. So then when you look at J.K. Dobbins, and I know a lot of people are probably going to backlash, but here's the thing. He had to come off of multiple major surgeries, and people thought that he was going to be sidelined. This is it. This is done with his career. But then comes back in an organization with a new culture in Jim Harbaugh, familiarity with Greg Roman, and literally has the season of a lifetime. Granted, he missed games, but this was more of the season of his life. So it was like he came back with vengeance. But for Joe Burrow, I mean, you had to think, he was shut down last year. They brought in Jake Browning. And, that was the story for Cincinnati. Comes back and puts together arguably some of the most MVP-worthy stats that would have made him it. But because his defense and the organization from the Brown family never really did him any justice. So my thing is, I've said this for a long time, fans will be fans. I'm not punishing fans because they're going to think how they want to think, right? And for me, it's like I try to find the silver lining in everything because I'm not always going to be right. And there's parts where I'm like, even if I'm wrong, I'm going to account for it. But that's because the point of it is that you're trying to get the actual meaning in the middle as to why this happened, which is why it was Josh Allen's moment. Kevin O'Connell dealt with a lot of adversity and took a quarterback who people just basically brushed away and got him to the playoffs. And then there's a quarterback that arguably stood like a leader and had to talk to the coach, the coordinator, the owner, and had to get everybody on the same page. I mean, think about it. Remember, he also had to talk to Jamar Chase and had to kind of level him up and like, bro, we did not have this problem in LSU. We did not have this problem. And now you're speaking out and your concerns. But then he's vouching for all of them. He's vouching for T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, a lot of that in a quarterback. And it just speaks a lot about his value as a person. But again, I mean, hey, Pat Surtain put together a hell of a year as a defensive player of the year.
I'm glad he won the defensive player of the year. I shit you not, if they would have given it to TJ Watt, I would have been livid because not only did he not put up the numbers this year, the only thing he ranked first in, the only statistical category that he ranked first, even in advanced metrics, was forced fumbles with 6. And that's the only thing. And it's so sad that, people are like, well, TJ got snubbed. Trey Hendrickson had a better season. Myles Garrett had a better season. Patrick Surtain had a better season. And it's funny because Dan Orlovsky and Aditi Kinkhabwala, 2 people that are the voters on that committee who votes for the awards, they both said if the Browns had a winning record this year or even made it to the playoffs, Myles Garrett's the unanimous defensive player of the year. Unanimous.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. Myles Garrett is such a perennial player. We've discussed this before, especially when it came to trade talks. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well when we come back from break. But the point of it is people are going to feel about the NFL awards. And here's the other thing too. On top of that, look at the Hall of Fame inductees. Jared Allen, Eric Allen, Sterling Sharp, and Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. Nobody else.
You said Sterling Sharp, Eric Allen, Antonio
Allen.
Gates.
Yep, and Jared Allen.
And no Eli?
No Eli.
Woo!
So that's the thing. So here's my point on that for a couple minutes. To me, it was Antonio Gates' time. It was just because you could not have Tony Gonzalez in the Hall of Fame without putting in the guy who was part of a pedigree of tight ends. Think about it. Once Jason Witten is eligible, he's going to be in there too, because those were some pretty good. Think about the 2000s. That was a great pedigree of tight ends. And then we move on to where, Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, eventually Brock Bowers is building up, the resume. So
you really think Jason Witten is going to get in?
I do, because think about it. Like he was a red zone threat. He was a guy that also.
I mean, what are the numbers with him though? Did he have any All Pros?
Yeah.
How many?
He had I think he only had maybe 2, about 2. But the thing is, he was also very efficient when it came to the offense. Because think about it. He had to deal with Drew Bledsoe. He had to deal with John Kitna. He also had to deal with Tony Romo and also dealt with Dak. So he's had a multitude of quarterbacks, but still was very valuable to the organization, which, like Antonio Gates, he was very valuable to the organization because think about it. He's ranked 7th all time in receiving touchdowns for a tight end. 7. And then also he's had multiple Pro Bowls. He's also had multiple All-Pros. And then at the same time, he also holds the Chargers record for receiving yards and for receptions, which, by the way, if Keenan Allen does return back to the LA Chargers, he's going to eventually break that record from the Chargers franchise because he's been there for so long and he's been very pivotal to that organization. So, which is why I'm like, Antonio Gates, man, you couldn't leave him out. In fact, Rob Gronkowski came out and put it on a note. He's the reason that tight ends were cool. Like, it was the reason tight ends now became so pivotal because it influenced the George Kittles, the Travis Kelce's, the Rob Gronkowski's. It influenced a lot of those tight ends. That's why now you look at the value of them, you get them at a reasonable price. And we got more tight ends coming in this draft. I'm telling you, they paved the way for a lot of these tight ends now going into this league. They paved the way. They were so important with it. Jared Allen, I mean, let's face it, he was a very good edge rusher. Sterling Sharp, I think to me, like he had the numbers to prove it. He had the numbers to prove why he was a Hall of Fame inductee. And he was very good. But the thing is, Eli Manning, and I know a lot of people had pushback, so did Dan Orlovsky. I watched that interview. But to me, he's not a first ballot. And the only reason of this is because what was the only best year Eli Manning had in the league? 2011?
Beating the 17-0 Patriots.
Well, yes, but I'm saying from the league stature. I think was like his best year, and I get it.
Yeah.
I know he's a very successful postseason quarterback. But what's hard about this is he never dominated the league. And you know who's also up and on that ballot for next year in 26? Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees. That's why it's so hard. And we're getting to this point. Like I'm telling you right now, I've told you what kind of steak I like. I like medium rare. We are getting into the pink area where it is nice and it is juicy and savory. We're
mooing at you.
Yeah, and it's mooing at me because we are getting so in depth now with a lot of these Hall of Famers. It is so difficult because we've had so many of them. Now, people may think that, because to me, I feel like Drew Brees, abso-freaking-lutely, he'd be a first ballot. Because he has records, he has a Super Bowl, and mind you, he comes off an organization in San Diego, right, where they gave him a chance. They tried it, didn't do him any justice, but then he comes in and he's a household name in New Orleans. You know what's funny about that? He even explained on the Herd, nobody gave a rip about the Saints. Everybody was all about the city of New Orleans because of Mardi Gras and because of all that. They're like, they thought of you of like, thank you so much for like, you know, repping our city. They did not pay attention a whole lot to the Saints because think about it. They were not that great for a long time until finally Super Bowl, culture, and all of that finally got established. And now you're not only just watching LSU football, you're now watching Saints football. That's why I think it was crazy. And that's 15 years.
And the thing is, like, people look at Eli. He's 11th all time in pass yards. He's 12th all time in touchdowns. He's 11th all time in interceptions. Drew Brees, you look at him. He's 4th on the list for most yards, or no, 3rd on the list for most yards in a career. He's, I think, 3rd or 4th on the list for the most touchdowns of, you know,
in
the NFL.
Because this is the thing. Brady had to come in and go and break that record.
Yeah.
Which was why he he stood for as long as he did because he knew the touchdown record, the passing yards record was all those things he had to break. Because, and again, they were both very talented quarterbacks. The only thing is, Brady was not as highly, and I don't think Drew. I think Drew was more in the mid tier when he came out of college at Purdue at the time, because he came in as a late rounder, and the Chargers took a chance at him. And then, sure enough, Antonio Gates, LaDainian Tomlinson, Keenan McCardell, multiple other receivers, and then built upon this. It's crazy.
You guys keep Drew Brees, you guys have a Super Bowl.
Had an old line, they probably would have at least done him some justice. But, again, I'd save that for later.
The Dolphins made the biggest mistake of their entire, franchise when they're like, nah, we're going to pass on picking up Drew Brees in free agency.
And they are still, unlike Buffalo, still finding their franchise quarterback, because do we really have a lot of faith and trust in Tua? No disrespect.
Here's another thing. If Drew Brees goes to the Dolphins, Drew Brees stays there until 2020.
The Dolphins would have never even had to be in this carousel. And
the Dolphins wouldn't even have gotten Tua. Somebody else would have gotten Tua because Drew Brees retired in what, 20 or 21?
He retired. I think he retired in 21, I believe, because that was
21.
Because that's where he had to break the He broke the touchdown record at the time, and then I think he was also breaking the passing yards record, and then that's when Brady still came in this league and went and broke those.
Yeah, so you would have had Drew Brees there, no Tua Tagovailoa. Then you would probably be looking at the Dolphins as one of the worst teams in the league, and then in 2023 they have the number 1 overall pick, and they get their choice of Bryce Young or CJ Stroud if Drew Brees would have stayed there. Because in 2021, he retires. The Dolphins don't decide that in 2022, there's no quarterback worth taking. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, and all of them aren't, worth taking. So they go to the 2023 draft. You have Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, rather than the Bears having the number 1 overall pick and trading it to the Panthers.
You ever watch those? Have you ever watched those videos on YouTube about what, like, the they hypothetically, like, in history, if it went this route?
Yeah, I watched the one on Andrew Luck. Like, if Andrew Luck would have came out in the 2011 season rather than the 2012, RG3 would have went to the Colts. Andrew Luck would have went to the Panthers. Cam Newton would have went to the Broncos, and then Von Miller would have went right after that, which I don't even remember who. I think it was the Rams or something. Yeah. He would have went to the Rams, and that's just insane.
Oh my God! And then if they would have still had paired up Von Miller with Aaron Donald, it would have looked absolutely insane. And at the time in St. Louis before LA, like that. Yeah. Would have been insane.
That was the biggest what if Andrew Luck would have went out in the 2011 draft instead of going back his senior year and coming out in the 2012. Andrew Luck would have been the first pick of the 2011 draft over Cam Newton, and then Newton would have went to the Broncos. And then you got a question, like, Peyton Manning doesn't go to the Broncos and everything. Who does he go to?
I think he would have honestly had gone to the second most trusted organization, truthfully, at least at his day.
He probably would have stayed with the Colts.
I honestly could have seen him with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I mean, to build upon that offense, probably would have been a threatening force in the NFC.
Instead of getting Carson Palmer. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. Oh, man, we got a lot to break down. NBA talks. By the way, I'm saving this one too, and I'm savoring this because spicy stuff coming out in Chicago. And why are they coming out? Because first of all, the Kevin Warren stuff, we explained about that in the show. But there's more that's actually being added. Why this entire offseason, free agency, the draft, and next season are going to be so important for the Chicago Bears and for Ben Johnson, and I've got a lot of that to explain about it coming up. Well, we know Super Bowl is right around the corner on Sunday. We're supposed to be expecting snow again. 2.5. But, hey, we're getting prepared for that no matter what. And just because the season's ending, potentially, well, it's really not. I mean, Reese and I are going to be covering the NFL no matter what because free agency and all that is going to
all the way up until the draft.
Exactly. And so because of this, that doesn't mean that it's not going to end for our partners at BetUS when it comes to giving you the best in 30 years of their award-winning sports book, and not to mention the best sporting line for you to choose from to get you on the edge of your game. Just because the NFL season's wrapping up doesn't mean that you can't be betting on the NBA, Major League Baseball. By the way, pitchers, catchers report, man, I'm excited about that. The season's coming up around the corner. NHL is also still going on. College basketball with March Madness. We love it. You want to get on top of your game? Get online with BetUS.com. When you sign up, free deposits of $50 or more that matches up to 125% in those bonuses of up to $2,000. And best of all, when you sign up, you get your very own account manager to give you the best in play analysis, in-depth breakdowns of all you need to know. I'm excited about our final prime prediction up on this one because there's also some prop bets we're adding. I got 5 of them. But besides that, check out BetUS for yourself. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or seek therapy in all of your respective states for you to not gamble irresponsibly. BetUS wants you to enjoy what they have to offer to give you the best experience when using BetUS today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
Welcome back here on the Snake Sports Talk Show with our Super Bowl edition here on the show. We'll tell you what, I mean, the NBA, the trade deadline was absolutely bonkers, and it's because Luka Doncic now with the Lakers, Anthony Davis to the Dallas Mavericks, and it didn't stop there. You also have De'Aaron Fox now with the San Antonio Spurs, and to be honest with you, the Spurs will no longer be so boring on offense, even though I love Victor Wembanyama and I love Chris Paul. But this at least helps with their future. But I honestly would like the NBA, truthfully, if they didn't have their trade deadline the week of Super Bowl. Like, there's key adjustments that to fix. There really is. If you had the trade deadline the week after Super Bowl, because remember, the viewerships they're more likely to watch the Super Bowl than they are of hearing about trade deadlines, which is, to me, you'll catch a lot of those viewers after the Super Bowl. You would, because NFL would be getting a lot of their viewerships. They'd be getting a lot of their audiences. And I think it would make perfect sense for the NBA if they were able to do this. Now, one interesting trade that I think could be pretty pivotal, and this is why I think now the NBA, like the NBA's parity, unlike the NFL, it's not clearly balanced because there's not a whole lot of competitive teams. You have Boston's, you have Minnesota's, you got Denver's, you got a bunch of other players, like a lot of teams. And then at the same time, you got your Lakers because they're pivotal to Los Angeles, and now they've got their future in Luka Doncic. But here's the deal with this, is that NBA has eventually got to figure this out, and they've got to build a strong relationship with college basketball, because outside of Cooper Flagg and outside of one other player who's also very, very, very talented, who I like, who else am I honestly going to root for? That's the problem. I don't even have a whole lot of these stars that are in their third or fourth year in college, unlike the NFL. I got guys that are ready to be playing in day one. So that's what they got to fix. But I thought the one trade that was intriguing was the Jimmy Butler trade, going up to Silicon Valley and teaming up with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and the Warriors. And the part of this is, too, now they've also added, since the trade, a 2-year, $121 million contract extension. So Jimmy Butler, lots of controversial things were wrapped up all around. And part of this is because, he wasn't going to end up playing if Miami, truthfully, wasn't going to build a ton of talent all around them. I like Tyler Hero. I like Bam Adebayo. But Miami was kind of on the brinks of losing their chances of being competitive. Now that you got Boston and you got, you still have Milwaukee lingering around, but there's not a whole lot after that. And then at the same time, you got your Indianas. So Jimmy Butler, in my opinion, a lot of things were crucial all around. But I do think that he builds a significant importance for the Golden State Warriors because he will be a very pivotal piece when it comes to the perimeter shots. He's capable of getting a bucket. He's capable of at the very likely, when teaming up with Steph and Draymond, you got to build that communication. That's what's going to be important. Now, lots of things that also surrounded this was the conversation about KD's reunion to Golden State. Well, that didn't happen. And I think part of that is because you didn't want to float the narrative around that KD needed Golden State. But then, of course, the other thing is the roles were kind of flipped because Klay Thompson gone, a couple of other players out of Golden State are gone now in that trade. You didn't want to be put with a narrative that Golden State needed KD. So I think Golden State, it does make them competitive, but at the same time, I feel like that this is kind of a final hurrah for this Warriors team with Steph and Draymond. Now, I don't think that there was any bad blood between KD and Draymond. I think they kind of hashed that all out, but I don't think it was going to be the narrative at the end of this whole thing. So Jimmy Butler, I think it's interesting. I think it makes the Golden State Warriors competitive to an extent, but eventually you're going to have to build this future. And that's what the Golden State Warriors are probably going to end up narrowing with. But if they can do that, and I know Silicon Valley will provide the money and they'll make it happen, but you look at the state of the Western Conference, I still think at the now, Dallas is still competitive. I think Minnesota to a degree, kinda. And then the Lakers, they are a very hyper-aggressive offensive team. But defensively, even with their center, it's questionable. Let's see what happens. But there are going to be some interesting teams that are going to be rising up in the playoffs. And some teams, you kind of know what their identity is. by the time you get into the NBA playoffs, and you'll see with the roster construction what they'll look like for the future. Interesting move, but hopefully it does pan out for Jimmy Butler and for the Golden State Warriors. Let's get to Chase with the news.
This is the hot press.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting trade, but I mean, am I wrong? I think honestly, if you put the NBA trade deadline a week after Super Bowl, there's all your audience right there, because football season would be done until the until free agency hits in March. So it's like,
No, football would not be done until then. Football would still be going because you got the NFL Scouting Combine at the end of February, beginning of March.
But what I'm saying is that you've got the season wrapped up. So there's your audience right there the week after. So that's why I'm like, if the NBA could just do this, because that's when people are going to potentially tune into the NBA and potentially tune in to the March Madness tournament in college basketball. So it's like, these are some pretty easy tweaks to do. But that, again, Adam Silver needs to, at the very least, get control of that. Because the whole thing is that why that Luka trade had to happen, and then a multitude of other trades that happened in the trade deadline. I mean, now it makes the NBA a little interesting in the now. But I think if you put it a week after Super Bowl, I could be fine with that, because people will be cooling down from the NFL season after the Super Bowl until scouting combine, free agency, draft, all that stuff now starts to come up. And think about it, because July, I believe, is when the schedule releases start to come out. That's where you got enough time right now. But that's up to the NBA to fix that.
Oh, yeah. But to start off the news with, let's take a moment of silence and go ahead and honor Virginia McCaskey and her time with the Chicago Bears. She had passed away this past week. And, you know, to honor the Chicago Bears with 102 years she has been with them.
You know, here's the thing. I mean, George Halas, they still wear the GSH on their side of their jersey, because George Halas was very pivotal to this Bears organization, and they're a very proud organization. Now, I know everybody has mixed emotions towards the McCaskey. I get it, because you didn't quite throw away that 1950s television of defense first, monsters on the midway. You didn't throw that away because the offense still looks dud, like it's still a dud. And so we'll get into that a little bit more on the Chicago Bears, but rest in peace, Virginia McCaskey, 102 years old. I will tell you, though, I mean, what an amazing life. And by the way, when the Bears were purchased, he was invested. He was bought into the organization at the time, and then that's what translated to a Super Bowl victory in 1985 with Mike Ditka and that defense.
A Super Bowl appearance in 2006.
Yep. And, you know, and that's the thing. It's such a proud organization, and it's a great sports town. Like, they're fully invested. I mean, you got the Phillies, you got, you know, the Texas, you know, you got a lot of those in the Midwest, almost close toward the East, like, that are fully invested. I mean, think about it. You have the Cleveland Browns, and even their organization with their fan bases, they're very proud in their organization, but I'll be truthful with you. Not a lot of people look at a lot of Cleveland except for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But you do have the Canton, Ohio's of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You do have right down on the Beltway where you got Cincinnati right from there. But they're very fully invested. And think about it. I mean, they're very big in when you go to Columbus, when you watch Ohio State football. So Chicago is such a great sports town. I have yet to visit it, but they are big on all their Chicago sports.
Oh my gosh, you are missing out. It's so much fun there. I spent some time there for a two-day weekend, and we actually got to take a tour of the Bears Stadium. They have that for the public if you want to, you know, take a look at that. But moving on to the next piece of news is that Deion Sanders was on a lot of talk shows this past week for the Super Bowl. And, a lot of conversation was brought up with his son and saying like, hey, there's been talks with the Titans, there's been talks with the Browns, there's been talks with, the Giants and everything. Where do you want him to go? And in Shedor's mindset, he wants to be the number one quarterback taken. He wants to be the first one off the board. He wants to be a very high draft pick. And Deion was saying, like, I was picked number 5. Shedor wants to go 1 through 4. And, he's just like, whether he goes 1, 2, or 3, it does not matter. So it's looking more and more like Deion Sanders is approving of him going to Cleveland. And what they like about, or what Cleveland likes about him, is his decision-making on the field, and that's what is drawing interest towards him.
But that's the deal. Like I told you, is that because everybody was on this quote-unquote theory of Deion is going to have his hands on this whole thing, Deion, I mean, think about it. Would you ever have your hand on the whole entire situation if it came down to your kid figuring out, where am I going to live? How am I going to set my finances? How am I going to, because there are certain conditional things to teach your kids. That's why, when my wife and I, when we start our family at this year, that's one of the big, because we have these conversations all the time. There are parts of it conditionally I want to be, we both want to be involved with. But then there's parts of it I want my kids to grow and succeed on their own. I want them to be able to trailblaze their path, because so that's why I think this was right for Deion, because Deion, like I said, he's got other things in his life that I know that he's focused on. I got to focus on a program that I'm trying to make relevant, and he's done that in 2 years. So, and then he's trying to build the track record of building these young kids into young grown men for the future, and he has very much preached upon that. Oh, and by the way, your boy's going to honestly go to some Colorado games this year. Because you want to know why? Because guess who they hired as a running backs coach? Marshall Faulk.
Interesting.
He is now a running. So I get Marshall, I get Warren, and I get Deion. Hell yeah, sign me up to go down to Boulder, 40 minutes down from me, and I'm going to go there to Folsom Field, and I'm going to watch these guys coach up. Because you know what? That just makes the Colorado program even more interesting. So expect me to have our show up and around up in Folsom Field and, watching these guys. Because, again, I think it's a great hire, because here's the thing. We're starting to see a lot of these influences. Because here's the other thing. Did you see the news on Ron Rivera now being the GM of Cal Berkeley? Now starting to – and by the way, Cal Berkeley, they've only produced 2 pivotal quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff. And then they ended up getting, Marshawn Lynch's. You also had the Keenan Allens. I think, to me personally, I think he's going to very much build this roster from however college football is going to put this together. I think he's going to make this a very, very perennial defensive program. I just see it. Because, mind you, he's very smart at defense. So I think if you get the right defensive guys when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to the transfer portal and the NIL, I think Cal Berkeley might be right there up on the way. And not a lot of people. If anybody's ever been there up in the NorCal area, it is beautiful there. I've only been to San Francisco once, but if you're up there in the Cal Berkeley area, it's very nice.
It'll be interesting.
A lot of trees up out there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So part of one of the things is you've seen David Njoku kind of come public about the whole Myles Garrett trade situation and saying like, hey, I want you to stay here. And David was coming out saying like, I'm Cleveland all the way. I'm not going anywhere. And they're working on trying to get him a contract extension. And he has come out and said, just like Denzel, we are not that far off. We just need a quarterback. And what is making me think that the Browns are going after Shedor Sanders and why Deion is okay with it is who they hired as their quarterback's coach, Bill Musgrave, who was a backup quarterback for the Niners when Deion was there in his time. And he was sitting there saying, Bill knows a lot about how to work with quarterbacks and do it the right way. So, it's going to be interesting these next 2 months to figure out, are the Browns taking Cam Ward if he falls, or are they taking Shedeur Sanders?
I think this offseason for the Cleveland Browns is going to be really important for them, because even though they're in a position where they owe, rather than have cap space to where they could potentially get some guys, I've said this before. If you are Cleveland, I understand a perennial player like Myles Garrett. I have no issues with him wanting to go to a team that wants to compete, because part of this is because he's chasing for greatness. He's not chasing for the bag. And listen, the money will speak itself. That's why a lot of these great companies, right, they're not about trying to shoot for the bag. Okay, that's why these wide receivers this year, when they ended up chasing for the bag, and then their quality of play is, I've only missed X amount of games, I suffered in a season-ending injury, and now I got to be sidelined and got to expect next year I got to play out. I got to play balls to the wall now, next year. That's why a lot of these companies and organizations, they're smart like this, because they do not want to be in a position to where they could potentially be trapped in a contract. Because to me, I want to get the most value possible, because I want to consistently grow my quality. Like, that's why my biggest goal when it comes to this show in particular is I'm trying to build the quality, because that's what's going to open opportunities to now start to accumulate the quantities, viewership, sponsorship opportunities, and at the same time, financial stuff, financial lucratization. So to me, if the Cleveland Browns were to pull off some kind of move, right, to at least keep him there, again, I hope it's not a lengthy long term. That's the only reason. I've told you about this before, because if you do, now you are not only going to be trapped with Deshaun's contract because of the length, size, and all that, but now you're going to be stuck with Myles' lengthy contract. That's why a lot of these teams, when it comes to it, they will pay the money, but it's the term year part I'm concerned about. Because again, you want to move up, you want to go and get the next perennial player in the draft. That's why I told you when it comes to the Abdul Carter talks, I think it works out perfectly, because now you are building a camaraderie of a defense that is going to be tops, because Greg Newsome, he's waiting for a contract. You're going to fix up that D-line. You're going to probably get at least a linebacker, because the question is on JOK is what he's feeling like health-wise. But so, you know what I mean? I would rather get the value that I can and build this thing up to now. No, it's not a rebuild. It's more of a retooling and a revamp where I can reload on it.
Yeah, and I do truly think that we are just a quarterback away. If we do somehow decide to keep Myles and we go with the quarterback, Ward or Sanders, in the first round, having, one of them start this next year, you're going to get $44 million back from the insurance thing that you got for Deshaun. By 2026, his contract will be up, and Myles Garrett's contract will be up at the end of 2026 as well. So therefore, you've got a lot of cap space that you will have freed up, and you won't have to pay your quarterback for another 3 years if either of them do decide to work out. So it's going to be interesting to see if they go with the Ward or Sanders route, or if they go with the Abdul Carter route and then go pick up Dart in the late first, early second. Now, the last piece of news that we've got is we have a few people that are, pondering trade requests. One of those is another Brown, Denzel Ward, coming out and saying that he's going to see how the Myles Garrett situation plays out, and then he's going to ponder on whether or not he should be traded. And then the other one is Max Crosby. Depending on what they do with the quarterback situation there at the Raiders and what Pete Carroll can do, he has said that he's got one body. He's not going to be able to play forever, so he's thinking about requesting a trade as well.
So here's a couple of some things to add to this piece. Is the news coming out of Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson is not coming back. So Pittsburgh's going a different route. Now, that now keeps the open space for the Raiders maybe to potentially reunite Russell with Pete Carroll, because that's the only part. But again, we have seen Russell in the AFC West. Now again, Nate Hackett was obviously off his skis. Sean Payton at least got the best out of Russ, but wasn't quite the quarterback that he projected to have, and that's why now he has Bo Nix, and he's going to build a future upon that. But with Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, Pete, as you know, builds upon his guys through confidence, and at the same time, he's a very well-respected recruiter. We saw this in USC for a long time. He produced the Carson Palmers, the Matt Leinarts, the Reggie Bushes, and Lendell Whites, and the list goes on. But the other thing is he's also been accounted for of the defensive play. So which is why, Max Crosby, I feel like, to me, I think the Raiders are going to do whatever it takes to give him the money he deserves to keep him there. I think, like I told you, I've been speculating on this now for the last few weeks when it came to Tom Brady. That's the person I'm focused on. I'm not focused on Mark Davis because ultimately Mark is the one who provides the money. But if you provide the perspective of Tom Brady, cross your fingers he gets the quarterback right. Because remember, this is a different business. This is not like when you were on the field and you requested to have like a Mike Evans, a Chris Godwin, a Rob Gronkowski. This is different. You are now in the war room. You are now in the business. So I'm hoping he does get this right. But I will tell you, if Myles Garrett leaves, Denzel Ward will now be the second hot commodity at corner next to Jair Alexander, who could be traded. And you know what? There are some teams out there that could be looking for corner. Chargers are one of them because honestly, like they've hit on two guys. Elijah Molden, they traded for a 6th-round pick to Tennessee, and then their 5th-round pick, who was an absolute steal, Tar Heel steal. I think they might move on from Christian Fulton, to be honest with you. I think it was more of a one-year experiment, and I feel like they now need to get a legit corner to build this thing up because this thing's humming. The Washington Commanders are another one because they got plenty of cap. They got some capital to give up because this is
3 first-round picks for Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. I'll take it.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, they are the ones in play. The ball's in their corner. I think another one, I think the Raiders could be open to it. I think the Patriots are another one. And I think one other team that could very much look for a pivotal corner, the
Lions.
The Lions could, yes. Now, they do have some guys there from the safeties and then, of course, Kirby Joseph. But they could they're open to adding more. So I'm telling you, I like both those corners.
Imagine Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward both going to the Washington Commanders. You fix your defensive line, pairing him with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, and then you have Marshawn Lattimore and Denzel Ward playing together for the first time since Ohio State.
Now, I'll be honest with you. I think if there's a person that they will shop, I think it's Jonathan Allen. I think that's somebody that they can shop for a trade. And the only reason of that is because at least I'll have Daron Payne from there. And I can go get a defensive tackle because of how deep this draft is. But because at least it'll keep the consistency. I got to watch what Adam Peters does. Because I think this is a guy who's made a ton of moves. Just like, again, like I said, I think between him and Joe Ortiz that were brand new GMs that came into this league, I got to watch both of them. Because those are guys that are going to be on the maps that are going to make some very impactful trades.
Yes, sir.
All right, Jace with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
So a spotlight I wanted to put on. So this next season is going to be so important for the Chicago Bears. Why? So there is more reports of some stories coming out in Chicago's organization. Now, of course, it's a very emotional time because Virginia McCaskey had passed away. Another rich history piece to this very proud organization. Now, I told you beforehand, there was a story at one point, and we were talking about this, where the Bears were very close. And by the way, they were very close to getting Jim Harbaugh. So Jim Harbaugh, before he took the Chargers job, he was interested in the Chicago job. He was interested in it. But the thing that prevented that from happening was Kevin Warren inside the organization because of past beef in the Big Ten. And you saw me roll my eyes. I'm like, get over it. Because at the end of the day, Jim Harbaugh is one of one as a culture-minded coach. Okay, you're not getting another one of those. Pete Carroll, I know a lot of people think very differently because, yeah, he's 73. He is up there in age. But you cannot knock the fact that he is a culture-setting coach. He's got a ton of experience. He's also a very good, respected recruiter, which is why I'm very surprised that Lincoln Riley at USC didn't even knock on his door to ask him for advice, respectfully. So we thought there was a lot of high expectations for Chicago last year with the Caleb Williams situation. They got a new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. I thought this team was capable of winning more games than what they finished up with, but I was not surprised with it. So here's the reports. Okay, and this is tasty. So after the Chicago Bears, there's a report on them that during the season, and what's coming out is Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, who eventually got fired. There's reports coming out now that when Caleb Williams, when they were playing in the season, there's a report that Caleb Williams had to literally seek outside resources for film. Why is this coming out and why is this so significant? So the resource on it is he had to reportedly seek outside resources to review film because Shane Waldron was not doing it with him. Williams even went as far as creating his own film study room to make up for the lack of coaching from Shane Waldron. This was off of one of the websites, Sports Mockery. Waldron was then fired by the Bears on the 12th of November and was recently hired as the Jags' new passing game coordinator. And the Bears' offense last year ranked 30th in total offense and 24th in scoring at the time of Waldron's fire. Why is this so significant and why is this important? Because you knew, and Chase can attest to this, but you knew this season is going to be so important for a few people. Ben Johnson, of course, their new head coach. I'm still out on Ben Johnson depending on how things go. I got to see 5 games of this puppy if this honestly works, because it's a lot more than just trying to make Caleb Williams work. It's a culture thing. It's a culture damage that needs to be put together. Ryan Poles, the GM, former offensive lineman. You got to get the offensive line right. And the other thing is, too, Ben Johnson, when he took on the job, who did he hire as far as coaching candidacies? He hired Dennis Allen as the defensive coordinator, which I had no problem with. I like it. I love the hire. I think it will work. And defense has never been a problem. But when you look at all the hires out of the Detroit Lions tree, he hired JT Barrett, quarterbacks coach. He hired Antoine Renelel for a wide receivers coach, and also hired one other piece to be their offensive coordinator. So Ben Johnson, to me, what it seems like is that he will be a guy that's invested in helping Caleb Williams' situation. Now, a while back, you heard about in camp where when the drafts were set, Caleb Williams had reservations about the Chicago Bears organization. And why was that? Well, look at their history in the last few years, probably since 2006, where they last made the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman and that great defense, and also Devin Hester. This Chicago Bears organization had question marks written all over it. The way their coaching staffs had changed over the years. Also, the other part is that they were never consistent on building an offense, and that has always been a problem with them, because you got to think the most pivotal quarterbacks in this organization was Jim McMahon and Jay Cutler, who both, let me be brutally honest with you, were not even that great to watch. Jim McMahon was the quarterback to help make the offense work because they had such a great defense. Richard Dent, that fridge, all those guys. Jay Cutler, once he left Denver and came to Chicago, he became a name that lasted for quite some time, but had Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs, Peanut Tillman, had Daniel Manning. They had a lot of very good defensive players, and that is the only reason that it was so pivotal. This is why this offseason is so important for the Chicago Bears and for Ben Johnson, because you have got to clean up this culture damage. You also now need to build consistency in the building, because if this is the true thing, and Shane Waldron got hired as a pass game coordinator in Jacksonville, so now he's with Liam Cohen. And you better hope that Liam Cohen is monitoring everything that's coming out. And the reason that this is out is because Chicago has to do the right thing. I know people have reservations about Caleb Williams with his fingernails and with all the attitude stuff and all the rest of it. And listen, I am not going to I'm a glass half full guy. I listen to everything. I want both sides of the stories, because that way I can come to a conclusion. It's like I'm doing my own personal investigations. I want to make sure I have the utmost 110% accuracy of stories so that it would make the point right and make sense. But Caleb Williams, the part I hold against him is the part where he holds the ball on for too long, needs to get quicker decisions. Because Jaden Daniels, from the outside looking in, he's looking at the quick decision snap, the snap and go mentality, because once the ball's in his hands, throw or run. Bo Nix it looks so twitchy once the ball is in his hands, because his feet are so happy that he could either run or he could pass the ball, but he's very much incorporating a lot of those dump offs, like jet sweeps and bootlegs and all the rest of it, but he's getting the ball out, and he's also making very good decisions, and he has a very good arm. Drake May, you look at in New England, this is arguably one of the most high-talented quarterbacks Mike Vrabel will now have to coach, and you better hope that the build is good with the offensive line, and I think there's a bunch of promise to him. Which is why with, Caleb Williams, he's looking at this thing on the outside, and he's going, what the hell? I think that's nuts that he had to literally go outside of his sources to create and study film. If that's true, how in the hell does Shane Waldron still have a job? You're an offensive coordinator, and this is why you got fired. It wasn't solely because, Matt Eberflus and the normal narration is that defensive coaches tend to get defensive. They tend to pull the reins. They tend to overly control their boundaries. We knew that. I mean, it's the same thing I've been harping about Dennis Allen, where Dennis Allen he's winning 35% of his games, but I love his defensive sets. It's the same thing I would even harp on with Matt Eberflus. but you all knew that. So, wow. I didn't even not like, again, I know a lot of people have mixed emotions towards Caleb Williams, and I get it. Like, take away the fingerprint stuff, like the fingernail stuff, and take away, like, but do you blame the kid? They had reservations about this organization at camp, and they had to clarify that in an interview where it's like, we do not dislike the Chicago Bears. Caleb is obviously going to go as the number 1 overall pick, and that's exactly what happened. It was going to come in. It was going to be invested. But do you see why I feel like with Ben Johnson, he's in a bigger position than most people give him? Because of this, why would this story come out at this point in time? Because you knew there is a lot more than making Caleb Williams work. It is everything internally. Because the fan base, you got to build the fan base's trust. I know a lot of people are very hyped about this. And by the way, you get Dennis Allen, never had an issue with defense. You go and get JT Barrett, a former quarterback, who, by the way, has Big Ten experience in Ohio State. That's going to help Caleb a little more because it will help him to build confidence. And then at the same time, Caleb, I hope that in this sounds to me like it's going to be a Caleb Williams resurgence in year 2.
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we've seen him go for like 5-6 weeks without throwing a pick until he finally threw one. And, he didn't start having a good resurgence until after Shane Waldron left and Thomas Brown took over as the interim head coach and as the OC. And now you're seeing like, okay, Caleb's starting to play better. His stats are starting to go up and improve. It's just a matter of if they can get the O-line to build around him or if they're going to go with Ashton Genty with their first pick in the draft.
But now this is the thing. Was part of not turning the ball over, was that a mixture of Matt Eberflus kind of getting a bit defensive as far as play scheme because he doesn't want Caleb to make mistakes? Or was it just kind of, because again, you saw like every time when we watched the snap this season with Caleb Williams, did you notice how much that he held the ball on for too long in that pocket? Because that's another pivotal factor too. And which is why that like I look at this as like, well, I watched Jaden Daniels be a snap and go quarterback because he has a very smart mindset. I got to make quick decisions. I got to get the ball out, or I got to take matters into my own hands and run for 5 yards. Go and get a first down. Bo Nix, a lot of people knocked on him because they thought that he could not throw the deep ball. But how many times has he done this all season? Like, there's a difference between the scouting combine, right, where people actually see the product, a preview of it, then you get the in-game rep. And I had to go
Which
back.
is why I like the Pro Bowl, the Senior Bowl a lot, because you're seeing these guys go up against other competition and seeing these guys go up against other players. Like, yeah, Caleb Williams was, fine at the Senior Bowl and everything, but he really didn't play a whole lot there.
No, and that's the other thing too is like, the other knock was, and this was actually pretty interesting because Shedeur didn't play, and in fact, people were so the
neither did Cam, but
well, no, but the reports is that scouters basically said he doesn't need to. We got everything we needed to see, and it's the same thing too. Like even with what it comes to with Cam Ward. Because people were doing their homeworks. Some of them were also going to the games and they were watching them and they were obviously watching film and breaking it down. Now, not all scouts are very accurate, right? They're not 110% accurate. Some scouts may make a mistake on some sort of, evaluation, and some of them might actually be pretty accurate, but it's not perfect. But at the same time, Caleb Williams, you see a lot of his strengths. He's very much of backyard football. That is his strength. He leans a lot towards his spectacular play. That's why USC was so pivotal up on that. But you can't always do that in the NFL, like not on a consistent basis without getting the unscripted playbook right. If you get that consistency, this is why Patrick Mahomes is what he is. Because think about it. How many times has Andy Reid had to keep him accountable when it comes to spectacular throws, right? He had to kind of clean that stuff up and said, you know what? You're right. I got to get into a rhythm. And look at what they're doing. They're playing a lot of the short pass to where Travis Kelce's getting wide open and getting the first down, and he's becoming a pain in the butt. Then you also build together a player like Xavier Worthy, who was a gadget guy, and now you got him involved, where now he's taking it to another level. He's now starting to get open more for deep threat plays. He's also getting involved now with bootleg cuts. I mean, that was huge for the Buffalo game. When he got there and got that first down on the outside to be the nail in the coffin for the first down and end the game, that was huge. So this is why, like, we break down the quarterbacks as we do, because the money's getting larger. The expectations are now becoming much more pressurizing because we're a caffeinated society. We expect results. But this is why Chicago has never had this with their offense. They had to rely on Jim McMahon, and freaking Jay Cutler. That's the only
Rex Grossman.
Yeah, that's the only guys.
Because Grossman got them to the Super Bowl, but
this is why Chicago is going to be an important season for them.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see what Ben Johnson can actually do with Caleb and see if he can get him back on track.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting, but our final NFL prime prediction of the year, which is, of course, the Super Bowl. So,
Kansas City.
You takeaways here. So the line is at 1. I'm going to go with the talented Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I'm not thinking with my heart here. I'm thinking about what I'm seeing altogether. I do believe both teams are built to be in this position. I really do. But I do know that Philadelphia, to an extent, I mean, they did this before. Philadelphia, if you recall in 2017, when they faced against that New England Patriots team with Tom Brady, they too had a great quarterback, but yet they also had a great roster altogether that everybody contributed. Last time these two met, it was a 3-point margin. It was that close. If it wasn't for the Jalen Hurts fumble, the Eagles probably would have won that game. But this is why situational play is important. So to me, I feel like the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm also going upon the prop bets from here. To me, my prop bet, so I'm going with the Eagles on that line. That's 1. Number 2, if you're giving me all-purpose yards, I'm taking Saquon Barkley to have over 200 all-purpose yards. That means both the ground and in the air. And the only reason of it is because everybody keeps harping about, the run game. Well, what about the pass? Jalen Hurts, you also know, relies a lot on making sure his components all work together for you. That's why he, a lot of people that give this rap that he's like, not the best, they got to stop. I'm not saying that he's overly elite, but he's good enough that he makes the team work. He's the closest thing right now to Russell Wilson than to Eli Manning. Because remember, if you remember those two appearances, right, they both had great defenses. They were both accounted for great defenses, but the difference was Russell Wilson had a little bit more elusiveness, and he also had a little bit more he also had a little bit more specialty than Eli did. I'm being honest. And that's why Jalen Hurts, he can attack you on the pass, he can attack you on the run, and he can attack you with all of the components he has. Now, I think this game, both quarterbacks are not going to have a turnover. They are not going to have a turnover. It is so huge on this because Jalen Hurts, on the back of his head, I can't make a turnover. Patrick Mahomes, he can't make a turnover. So I think this is going to be a very clean pass game for both quarterbacks. That's my third thing. I don't think either one of these quarterbacks is going to come away with a turnover. Now, as far as efficiency, I think Kansas City will be the most third down efficient team in this game because a lot of that is accounting for Andy Reid to put together packages to keep time of possession on their side. A lot of that is. And so, because that's why the Travis Kelce's, the Samaje Perine, the Xavier Worthy's, everybody is going to be a contributing factor here. They all are. So I think to that extent, it's going to lead me to believe that they'll be the most third down efficient team in this game. And finally, the coin flip.
Ooh.
This is always hard. But right now, here's the odd. The odd stands at 105 on the money line. If I had to pick it, I think the call will be heads. I think it will be heads.
What about the Gatorade color? I mean, there's betting for the Gatorade bath at the end of the game. Like, what color is it going to be and everything? Like, there is bets for that. I'm like, Jesus.
Like, come on, man. Gatorade is Gatorade. You all are going to drink the sugar, okay? Like, come on. Do I care about the color?
Not to me. I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, you can't until Mahomes shows me that he can't do it. I'm never gonna bet against the Chiefs. I mean, he has been more efficient with over the past 5 weeks and making sure that he does not turn the ball over, making quick decisions, doing what he can. And then Steve Spagnuolo, with the way that defense operates and everything, you cannot count him out. He's the type of guy who will bring in an extra corner to play linebacker to have the speed on the field to be able to stop Saquon Barkley and everything. Or he'll be the extra guy, or he'll be the guy that brings in an extra linebacker to play edge, to blitz off the edge, to be able to stop Saquon in the backfield. Because their whole goal is to stop Saquon and make Jalen throw it. And Trent McDuffie's going to be on A.J. Brown all night. And then Reed's going to be covering Devontae Smith. So it's going to be a Dallas Goedert and a Saquon Barkley show. And if you can shut them down, you can easily win this game. Because with the Chiefs, they got Xavier Worthy, they got DeAndre Hopkins. Juju even contributed the last game that he played. Then you've got Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco.
Now, I do think that, because like I said, I think ultimately what it comes down to, I mean, this is the closest thing to 2017 when the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, you got to think, they both, from this one and then the one in 22. I mean, they had very talented players, but I think the difference of it is that Philadelphia had Miles Sanders as their running back, but did not have a talent component like Saquon Barkley, which is very huge. Now, mind you, Philadelphia, I mean, they were at a point where they had J.H.I. and not a whole lot on the run game was truthfully going well, but they did contribute as far as all their components all the way around. But Alshon Jeffrey was really good. Nelson Aguilar was really good. Zach Ertz was very good. So I think this has to be by far the most talented Philadelphia roster that we've seen in a very long time.
And when you get Myles Garrett on there, it's going to be even more talented.
Oh, my God. It wouldn't even be fair. But a lot of this is just accounted for. And again, I think this comes down to where it's the byproduct of hyper athletic talent versus I think this is ultimately a David and Goliath type football game because it's going to come down to the Goliath roster of Philadelphia and the David of Patrick Mahomes who has to play against that highly talented roster. But it's not like he hasn't done it before. I mean, the difference with San Francisco and Philadelphia is Jalen Hurts is far more talented than Brock Purdy. Let's be honest about that. Because Christian McCaffrey...
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Well, he did secure the throws. But I think you get a little more. I think you get a little bit more of a stretch with Jalen Hurts than you do with Brock Purdy, because
only thing you have on up on Jalen Hurts is the legs. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And at the same time, I mean, the tush push works. I seriously am thinking they might rip off a page in the old playbook, and I think we might actually see a Philly special play if they do that. You know how crazy Philadelphia fans are literally going to go if that truthfully happened. I mean,
or we're going to have a blackout and everything, and then all the momentum is going to swing towards the Chiefs.
Yeah, and maybe we might get a special appearance from Taylor Swift in that Kendrick Lamar concert. I mean, come on.
She's already going to be there, so.
Oh, I know. She was there in Vegas. She's going to be here in New Orleans, so it's like you never go without. But, yeah. You know me. I mean, I've been hearing all this talk for like weeks. I'm ready for this thing to be over and recoup for 4 months. But at least I got free agency in March. I've got scouting combine. I've got NFL draft. And I've got
I'm excited for the mock drafts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the mock drafts. I mean, we got our top 10 draftees that we were looking at, because again, I'm studying my homework too. But the thing is like, this is why the NFL trumps all major sports, because even if you go to a season conclusion, doesn't mean that like, oh, it's gone away in the back burner for a long time. No, it keeps going on. Major League Baseball, I mean, the difference of it is like, you'll have the Hall of Fame induction, you'll have the All-Star game, and you'll have like, the season, because it's such a long stretch. But everybody knows that they'll be tuning into October. Because remember, much like, shows, when we put all these together, right, we're all in a show schedule that's consistent. You want to prevent a lot of these overlaps. But
I wish the MLB draft was in January or February. That's the thing that irritates me. Because you got the draft halfway through the season, and then after these players are drafted, then they go to the team. You've got them for the rest of June, July, and then August, and then they're gone like pretty much by September. If you had it in January or even February, now you've got these players for the entire start of spring training. You've got them for the entire minor league offseason. And then if they wanted to bring them up on the roster by the time September's over, if they've done well, then you can. And not only that, I feel like people would actually tune into the MLB draft if they had it towards the beginning of the year rather than towards the middle.
Well, and I think ultimately it's like we talked about with the NBA. If they had the trade deadline a week after the Super Bowl, then that's where they'll get a lot of their audience's eyes, is through that. Because you got to think, I mean, this was an absolute, it was a madhouse. Once, Luka, when that trade went down, it affected everything. Like NFL players were talking about it. A lot of people were talking about it. Like, if you put that thing a week after the Super Bowl, think about it. They would have had much more viewership than what they got, I'm sure, probably by the end of this thing. Because this was actually what made the NBA so interesting. Because now I got Luka in LA, I got Anthony Davis in Dallas, I've got Jimmy Butler in Silicon Valley. Like, I've got a lot of guys, and now De'Aaron Fox in San Antonio. So it's like the NBA has the potentials to get it right, but it's up to Adam Silver to really make those tweaks. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I just think, say what you will, the NFL is always going to continue to do its business, because rule changes, schedule releases, international play, because now the talks of obviously another international spot that could happen, because we already have London, we already have Mexico City, we've already got Brazil. Now we got another one that's also going to be possibly happening. So there is all sorts of opportunities. And I think a lot of that is because it's just growth of business. It opens it up. But that's why you gotta really look at the quality of your product. And you gotta build great partnerships. They have a great partnership with college football. So they've got partnerships with all these streaming sites.
And don't be surprised if in the next 10 years we get 4 new expansion teams, make them international teams.
I mean, think about this. NHL is already on the right path. I mean, they're already going to get a new TV deal with Canada. They've already got 2 expansion teams they're going to be potentially looking forward to, because the argument is, does Arizona get their team back? Because mind you, once they move to Utah, they still have the eligibility, and I think it's good for 5 years. So within that 5 years, the Arizona Coyotes could make a comeback. The other question mark, could we see a return of the Atlanta Thrashers? So NHL
baseball is going to expand too, because Rob Manfred's been talking about bringing back the Expos and then also having a team down in Mexico City.
Yeah, all this new money. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's just so good that we are literally we're grateful that a lot of these major sports, I mean, this is part of the come-ups. But again, when it comes to the NBA, I mean, the NBA had strikes. Major League Baseball had strikes. NHL also had strikes. But the NFL, I mean, there was a time period where it was pretty hard. But they made it right. They made it up. And sure enough, they're right there up atop the world of the major sports. So, good stuff, man. The NFL season coming all the way down to this. And again, I've been processing this for weeks. I've been hearing a lot of, outside, perspectives where I'm like, I'm really ready for this thing to be done, because you know what it is? Is it's like you're going in camp for 6 months, and mind you, it's brutal. You got to put in all your time. You got to put in all your effort. And I think we've done a pretty damn good job with at least the NFL season. Now we get a chance to go into the off season, and I'm pretty excited about it. We're excited about mock drafts. We're excited about, the draftees and all that. So there's a lot more really to come from it. But again, I just feel like I'm finding myself talking more about hockey than the NBA. I mean, that's really what's been kind of the talk of the season.
Yep.
But like all things, our show must conclude, but doesn't have to end, because we got a lot more coming at your way. And we'll always be coming at your way with some of the best on the show. We appreciate everybody for riding with us all NFL season long and continuing to stick with us all season long. Show sponsored by BetUS and by SeatGeek. Sign up at BetUS with your first 3 deposits of up to $50 or more, with 125% bonuses of up to $2,000 when you sign up with their 30-year award-winning sports book, online at BetUS.com, where the game begins, and also by SeatGeek. I encourage all of you guys to use the promo code, because you do not want to miss out on future events, whether it's sporting events, whether it's concerts, whether it's art shows or comedies, whatever it may be that shows your interest. Check out why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Go online to SeatGeek.com, download it on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store, and please use the promo code Snake Sports for $20 off your first purchase of your first ticket. I use it all the time. Never had any issues. I've had past ticketing apps that were kind of a pain, but not with SeatGeek. SeatGeek has been the most reliable. I use it. I trust it for my next event. Trust it today and check it out for yourself at SeatGeek.com. With Chase and myself, enjoy the Super Bowl. We're going to recoup. We're going to be right back at it next week. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the Super Bowl.
This is the hot